Ah. Hey everybody. Welcome back to the NerdEye Twitch channel slash podcast thing where this is where me and Craig talk about stuff concerning RPGs,
Stuff and
uh
things.
things and stuff, you know. What's our topic this evening, sir?
Oh, was how did you phrase it?
I don't know, I could go back to the chat and figure
Yeah,
it out.
it was staying
It was
motivated, fighting writer's
staying
block, like
motivated. Yeah.
finding the time, making the time, whether that be for game design or just for like GM prep or anything else, like just anything in your life that falls outside of like the absolute must do's, like work and family requirements and so forth. But like if you've got a creative endeavor or a thing like a hobby that you like to put time in on, sometimes it can be hard to motivate yourself to do those things.
I think that's a good topic. And I think that you, as somebody with a highly successful Kickstarter currently out there, can probably speak to how you were able to accomplish that. So, like, how did you make sure that you stayed focused on getting that thing ready to launch during this? Because I mean, it was a deadline thing. Because right now, during February, it's the zine thing, so you
Yeah,
had
that's
to have it ready by a certain time.
I needed to have the very successful Kickstarter for low stakes ready to go for some time in February. Admittedly, it could have slipped into later in February, but I really wanted to launch right away on the 2nd. And so it became like it was just a relatively small project for me, like for my game stuff. Like, this is a small little book.
Yeah.
But what I did was, like, I knew it was coming, and once I knew it was coming, I just immediately got like some sort of a schedule in place. Didn't put off starting, and kind of spread everything out. Like I planned, like I'm going to make sure I don't want to be trying to crunch this thing in the last month right beforehand because there's a lot of moving parts. So I got started, several months in advance, and I really just like did a little here, a little there. And just made sure, like my tendency with working on anything to keep myself motivated is, and this is a luxury of all of these things being in my free time. Like I have a day job, so like
Right.
I do all this stuff in my free time. So, I'm not on a deadline to like produce, to put food on the table and a roof over my head. So take that as you will, but I have a tendency to get started as early as I can, and then like make sure that I do like commit to doing a little bit every week. And it doesn't have to be on the same day or the same time, but make sure that I am, kind of plunking away, doing a little bit this week, a little bit that week. If I take a week off, that's okay. I don't kick myself for it. But I make sure that, like, that next week or whatever, I get right back on it and just kind of spread it out. Like, so for this little game, it was, I designed a little, I brainstormed ideas for designing, and I just kind of toyed around with some ideas, and then I came back to it a little bit later and I massaged those ideas a little more, and then I put together a basic rule set, like all in one kind of little chunk that was just like bullet points, right, outlined.
Yeah.
And then I sat down and figured out what a character sheet might look like. And then I did enough character sheets so that I could play test in rudimentary form and literally just give people bullet points for the rules. And then, each step of the way did a little more, added a little more character stuff to it, fleshed the rules out into a proper description of rules. And didn't try to produce like, okay, here's a finished 36-page little mini game book. Now let's test it.
Right.
It just did it in dribs and drabs. That works very well for me.
Okay. Would you say that one of the keys of staying motivated is to have a deadline?
Deadlines help. And I certainly had one for this little game. But even for other bigger games where I don't necessarily know where the end game is. I don't know where the Kickstarter looks like it'll be when I start on a game, like on a bigger game. But I usually put like some sort of, there are interim deadlines to deal with, where I say, like, I want to have enough of it enough of it developed that I can run a play test, um, and just teach people the rules. Like I don't need to give them a document. I'll just have enough of it fleshed
Right.
out for myself to be able to run the play test. I just need to be able to give them a character sheet that kind of, is
Right.
complete enough. And then there'll be another interim deadline down the road that is like, okay, now I want to be able to give people something to read, and I want to try to have people who haven't play tested it previously sit down and figure out how to play it, and then giving it to play testers who've never seen it before. So it's interim deadlines, and then it's it all ends up in this little document where I kind of just define where I'm going, but it's a living document. It changes. Like I'll push the deadlines. If I get something done a little faster, great. Then I get something done a little faster. If it takes me a little longer some other time, then okay, that's fine. As long as I don't let it take too much longer. And I tend to get down on myself if I let it slide too much. So that's just a personal, like I'm willing to be harsh with myself.
Yeah,
like,
no.
Okay, you were planning to have this ready for this month. It took you till the next month. That's a whole month. Don't do that again.
No, and I'm actually somebody who's terrible about this, but what'll end up happening is if I don't get it done on like the time that I want to get it done, then I start beating myself up and it makes me feel bad, and then I get into a funk, and then it makes it impossible to do it again, and then it becomes this unending cycle where like I'm still late, but like I mean it's so late now, it's like and I just start beating myself up even more, and then I'm even later. That's why, occasionally I have a thing that's like 6 months late, and it's because I just had to fight myself to finally finish it, even though it was late. And that's hopefully, not too many people experience that because it's not fun. But it is something that happens, and usually in that time I'll be like, well, it's been forever since that thing, but at least I'm working on this other thing. And that's actually, if I recall, that's actually when like Sins of the Father got written when I was supposed to be working on, I believe, Ampere 4. So it's like Ampere 4 was late and I was supposed to be doing stuff for it, and I'm like, well, but I got this other idea and I gotta do this other thing. And it was, really bad. Like you're not supposed to do that. You're supposed to like, hey, if you have a thing that you're working on, you're supposed to finish that thing. But
Okay,
I'm actually very bad at staying on course,
Right. And that's something that we all run into. And I think, even, whether like, you're doing RPG stuff or some other hobbies, like you're doing one thing and then you get distracted by something else. The new shiny appears.
Yep.
How do you, like now you've described a time where you failed to remain on track with the thing and you got distracted by the new shiny. How in the past have you, or what do you want to, implement to stay on track with the thing that you're doing and make sure that the new shiny waits?
That's a good question. A lot of the time what I end up doing is I start setting aside a day. Like I'm like, hey, on Friday, that's going to be the day that I do that. And I'm not going to schedule anything else for that day. I'm just doing that. And that often works.
When you say doing that, do you mean doing the thing that you're supposed to be on track with, or you're
like
giving yourself one day to do shiny?
No, the thing I'm supposed to be doing, I'll be like, well, for right now, I feel motivated and inspired to do this other thing. So I'm going to work on that because I don't want to lose that. I feel like some of my best work comes when I am inspired in the moment. So, but what I say is, but I'm going to allow myself so many days, I'll work on this for the next 2 days, but that third day, I have to put this aside and I have to work on the thing I'm supposed to be working on. And like I said, that works most days. Like today, I had a project I was supposed to work on, but then what ended up happening was I woke up late and I had a headache, so I had to get my coffee and do all that stuff. And then I have people coming over this weekend, so I had to clean the house some. Then it's like so, and then I had to run my kids to a different thing, and then I had to cook dinner, and it was like a bunch of stuff. And I'm like, oh, I didn't do the thing I meant to do because everything else in life just took over. And and that sucks, but I mean, that happens too. So sometimes it's of no fault of my own. Sometimes it's entirely my fault. But that was today. I'm not blaming it on myself. But if I don't get stuff done tomorrow, then it's my fault.
Okay.
But normally I will say that. but normally I'll just be like, hey, like that day, and that's actually how I just finished the part-time God's Companion. Is I was working on a lot of different things throughout the week, and then this was last week, but I said, all right, Friday, I'm sitting down and I'm just going to do this and I'm just going to finish it. It's just over 2,000 words. There's no reason why this book can't be done already. So let's just get it done. And the team has been really good about finishing the edits, and we're on final proofs right now, which means next week will be when we actually get it out, because when we get all the proofing stuff back, we have to go in and make all the changes and then prep the docs and blah, 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 blah. So, at least the PDF will be out next week, and that makes me feel good. And actually, that's the other side of it, right? Is the moment you're late, you feel like crap, and then it makes it take longer to get it out because I feel bad. I mean, I'm not saying you. It's a thing that I do.
I've been there.
But then the moment I get that thing out, it's like a weight has been taken off of me, and I feel like liberated to do a million things then at that point. And everything that has been just waiting for me to do it, and I've been depressed and haven't been able to do it, I'm immediately jumping on top of it and doing it. And it's actually, that's one of my best feelings. I've always said that, like, as a game designer, I always like to have designed games, but the designing part of it is not necessarily the most fun.
That's a great point. It's something I saw circulating in my social media here recently, which was that the difference between the person who does the thing and the person who doesn't do the thing, and I'll just use writing as an example, but it applies across the board, is there's a difference between wanting to write and wanting to have written.
Yes.
And you need to want to write. You need
Right.
to want, you need, you have to find whatever it is for you personally, and it's going to be different for everybody, that motivates you to get into that moment of like, okay, now I'm going to sit down and I'm going to do the thing, whatever it is.
Yeah.
I'm going to write, I'm going to create, I'm going to brainstorm ideas. I'm going to just, throw stuff at a wall. I'm going to take this little part over here and massage it and expand on it and build it out. And I'm going to write some lore, or I'm going to, whatever the case is.
I don't know.
And not be overly concerned with like, well, when I get this done, then I can blah, blah,
right.
blah. Like, you need to stay kind of in the moment some of the time and say, I need to write, not just be focused on having written.
I think at some point there's a switch that gets flipped. I think when I first started, and I think what it is, I think it's when you're hungry, right? It's just like when you're first starting off and you're just like, I'll take any job. I just want to put something out, and I just want to, like, I think that's it feels like it's just, I just want to be writing all the time. And I think the longer you've done it, again, this is just me, I can only speak for myself, but like nowadays, like, I love the projects that I work on, because a lot of them are like, I made them, like, if I didn't want to be doing them, I wouldn't be doing them. I would just be like, no, that's a terrible idea. But no, so the idea though that I really love having a finished product, and at this point in my career, I understand what it takes to get to that point. So it's a lot less about staying in the moment with me nowadays. It is more about like I'll be like halfway done and I'm already ordering a bunch of art and like stuff like that. Whereas before I used to wait until the whole thing was written, then I would move to the next step. But I can be doing multiple steps all at once, nowadays, because it is about that end product now for me, because I want to be writing, like I'm writing the new ninja book, Poisoned Fruit. So like, I want to be writing Poisoned Fruit right now, but I also can't wait until it's done, and then I don't need to be writing it anymore. And it's a thing. It's already done. That's where I look to be. I don't know. It's it's basically saying the same thing, but it's just a different mindset. I get what you're saying.
Yeah, and it's a question of recognizing the difference between those two things.
Yeah.
Writing and having written, and figuring out how you can address both of those for yourself personally,
Yeah.
and have it cause you to write.
Yes.
Like, have it cause you to actually do the work up front. Because I'm there with you. I've made enough products now that I know when I get the last of the artwork, that's a great feeling. When I see the final layout and we are sure that it is done, like this is the game that people are going to get, that is really great. I had that this week with Good Strong Hands. I got the final layout from Todd. And that, that was a long time coming, but I had to stay on point with a lot of different things and keep remembering that, like, okay, even though I'm done, like moving past writing, even though I'm done writing, it's like, I'm going to have to, Todd's going to give me interim review PDFs of what the thing is starting to shape up like. And I'm going to need to be able to get right on top of it immediately in order to keep this moving, and provide feedback, because I want to get to that point where it is done. And that's never going to happen if I don't give him the feedback.
Yeah, that's one of my favorite things. I am really fast to give when somebody's done editing, to go through and finalize it. Or if somebody sends me like proofing stuff, I'll be like, yes, it's finalized. I'll do that like immediately when they send it to me. That's like, it's done, because I'm excited to do that, because as soon as that's done, it means it's done. So it's,
I force myself to do it immediately, because I know that if I sit on it, it's just going to delay somebody else's work. And that's for me, that hurts me more than it does when I delay my own work. Like, if I know I've got somebody on the hook and they're ready to roll, like I've got an artist and they gave me sketches and they were ready to go to take feedback from sketches and go to actual artwork. I turn that I turn that over quickly. And I think that you can apply that to anything that you're doing. If you're going to crochet something, like, you want that final crocheted thing, but you've got to make like 6 parts. And so you've got to make the first part, and then you've got to make the second part, and you're not going to get to the 4th part unless you get,
No, but I get what you're saying though, because like I've never missed a deadline, maybe once. But like, I am definitely not the one to miss a deadline if I'm working for another company. But if it's my thing, I've already got the mindset that, like, whatever, I'm my own boss for a fucking reason. Like, I can release shit whenever I feel like it.
I've been there too. I've never missed a deadline myself for another for another person, but I've let stuff slip for myself.
Exactly.
Because I'm a much more laid back boss than all those other ones are.
Exactly. For the same reason you just said, like, because then it feels like it's different if I'm doing it and it makes me late than if I'm doing something and it hurts the production schedule for somebody else who is counting on me to do this thing. Like, it's all about accountability. Like, I'm accountable to myself, but only as far as I want to make myself accountable to myself,
Right. So, and that can vary from day to day.
Exactly. So, but for other people,
if you're crocheting something for somebody else and they're expecting it,
exactly, like
you get on top of it. You don't want to disappoint
for their grandchild's birthday, and it's just like, I'm not going to let little Susie not have a crocheted blanket on her birthday. I mean, that's just silly.
Oh boy.
But I am actually very excited for just, a lot of the stuff that's happening. I know we talked like release schedules and stuff last time, but, I'm also working on like a bunch of other things for it. Actually, so here's the interesting thing. We actually just released a thing for Orun, like the last update on Kickstarter, because, people were like, what's going on with the book? And, we release an update like every month, but like, we're like, okay, fine, 2 this month. So here's another one, since and we got it right. Like, we understand we're literally just waiting for artwork. But there was about 6 months there where the whole book was waiting for me. because I took it
Ooh.
and I started working on the book, and I was like, well, basically I started to go through and do a developmental edit, a dev edit, like make sure that, I want this to be a +2 and not a +1, like just go through and just make sure that everything made sense mechanically. And when I was doing that, I was like, we could make this so much more robust. This seems like a really good first draft, and I feel like I want to twist it and make it more and just add more things. So I said, hey guys, I'm gonna do that. And I got about halfway done, and then like coronavirus happened. And then I didn't feel motivated. I didn't create anything for like a good 3 months. And it was heartbreaking, but it was hard. No creativity out of an Eloy. So what ended up happening, but at the end, I turned it around and I'm like, okay, so I finally got everything here out of a chaotic state. So let's finish the book. And I finished everything. We rearranged the book a little bit. We took some stuff out, put some other stuff in, and then I handed it all back. And I said, all right, it's all you. And then Jerry says, oh, well, from everything you just added, we now need to add a bunch more artwork. And I'm like, of course, what I just did would add more complication to.
You knew that.
I kind of
Who were
knew
you?
it.
Who did you think you were fooling?
I kind of knew it, but
You could add those 30 pages and have no artwork in them.
it ended up being a lot of extra art we needed though, because I
Yeah.
think I added even more than I thought I was adding, but in a good way. It needed to be there. The game is way better for having all like everything is there's I'm a big person. If anybody's played any of my games, I'm huge on having, lots of options for players. And yes, that can cause option paralysis sometimes, but they're all very interesting options that you can kind of go in a lot of different directions. And that's what the game needed. The way that it was written originally, and arguably it's my fault because I wrote it originally. So it was the way that I was written originally it was very straightforward. And I had just decided that I was like, no, I'm gonna tweak this, and this is gonna be amazing now. And it is really, really good. I think we're just waiting for like 2 more pieces of art, and then we can put it into final layout. We already did all the proofing because we sent it out to backers, and we had like a whole bunch of people catch all of our proofing issues. So I think that book will be out pretty soon here. I think we're literally just waiting for a few pieces of artwork, and then we can stamp it, and it'll be done. So that's also very exciting. I have 2 things coming out pretty soon. Uh, but it's very, very that's I mean, honestly, it's a fun thing being in RPGs. And some people say, like you're living the dream. It's just like, it's eh, it is
Well,
actually quite it is kinda,
it is a little, but at the same time, it like part of it's the dream,
yeah,
right?
yeah.
Part of
Like
it's a giant pain in the ass.
well, I mean,
That,
it's just like anything, it's some people will say like if you do what you love, then you'll never work a day in your life. But of course, the other side of that is the thing that you love is now your job, and you can't not do it. So it's it's the other side of that coin. Like, yeah. Like you love what you do, but now you can never not do that thing that you love, and too much of a good thing can be a bad thing. That's why you see so many people who decide they want to break into RPGs, and they're like, we're living the life, and then they stop putting stuff out because because that's how the life is. If
well, it happens in a lot of in a lot of careers that are like the types of careers that you like. You do this
creative,
thing, you love it, and then some people are good. They'll cruise until the day they die, and some people like they get to a certain point and they're like, okay, that's. I mean, I got into this because I loved it, and I've loved it most of the time, and I just don't love it like that anymore. So it's time to do something else.
well, I mean, but that's why, like, I have, I think people know who follow me that I've gotten into a lot of music recently, and it's just interesting when you hear people say like, this act was amazing. Look at how many albums they sold, and I'm just like, but the best musician in the world might be some lady in a bar who just doesn't have the gumption to need to sell a ton of albums. Like, she's just perfectly happy playing for small crowds because that's what makes her happy,
Right.
and that's what I'm saying. Like, I read some of these games, and some of the best selling games, sometimes I'll read them and I'll be like, this isn't, I mean, I would have changed a million things in this game. Like, I guess it's okay, but why is it selling so many copies? Marketing. I see. Good marketing budgets, because that'll do it for you right there. But of course, doing RPGs, we rarely have good marketing budgets. It's just
No, there's like 3 companies that have any marketing at all.
Yes. Let's see if we can name them. Well, obviously, Wizards of the Coast.
Wizards of the Coast, Paizo, and then one other company, and that changes from month to month. Who's actually
true.
getting real splash time, and people are noticing, like when they have a release sort of thing.
Yeah.
There'll be like somebody else that has a big moment. I think Free League tends to they've been really having their heyday. Like whenever they have something new come out, Free League kind of goes big. They get really noticed, at least in the circles that I see them in.
I was gonna say, I don't think I've ever even heard of that.
See, that tells you something. Tales from the Loop.
Oh, okay. Yes, I just didn't know the name of the
Aliens.
company. Yeah. They have that. Margaret Weiss for a long time was huge until
with
they stopped doing that. And White Wolf was really big back in the day. They're still around, but not in the same way anymore.
No, very different way.
I mean,
there's always been there's always been D&D, and then like a few others, and those few others rotate. Sometimes month to month, sometimes year to year. There'll be a company that'll be like really big and in the news and having a big heyday for like a year or so, and then they're still there and they're still making stuff, but they'll kind of fade to the background, and you just won't hear about their stuff unless you're kind of in the right circle to following them on Twitter or on their mailing list or whatever.
Exactly.
Or sometime, some company will have they'll decide to really pull out all the stops and have a big push at Gen Con, and that'll suddenly put them in the headlines, and everybody will be talking about how they did at Gen Con and what came out and what they were doing and everything.
Yeah. I think the biggest news now, the biggest big news was Magpie landing the Avatar Last Airbender license.
That was big news for 3 days.
I know everybody has been trying to get that license for years. I've talked to so many game designers who have tried to get that license. So that is actually an accomplishment, regardless of what you think of Magpie. I know some people like the company, some people don't. That's an accomplishment to get that license.
Absolutely. And it's going to be one of those things, because they're not Wizards or Paizo or whatever, or another bigger company. I mean, not that they're a small company. They actually have multiple full-time employees, which is more than most game companies can say. Looking at your game company, looking at mine. But it's going to be, because it's one title and it's it's a specific fandom. It's going to be one of these things that we're going to see like a big burst every now and then when there's like a milestone hit in the process of getting this game out. And then the supplements that they're going to do, and then like in between those chunks, they're just not going to be as noticeable unless you're in the Magpie circle or the Avatar Last Airbender circle. If you're kind of following it, like the average person who isn't into one of those two things is just going to be kind of like, they're not going to see anything about it for months. That's how marketing and RPGs work.
It really is, sadly.
Until there's an actual play that gets that's weekly and gets a big audience for a game other than a D&D or a D&D similar game. It was not
kind of interesting because I don't think I've told this story too many places, but I tried to go for the Naruto license. And this was before Ninja Crusade 2nd edition. I had first edition out, and I was just like, because I had already kind of like patterned it after Naruto and all that stuff, and it had that same kind of flavor. And I'm like, well, I could work on a 2nd edition, or maybe I should see if I can like do an official Naruto RPG or whatever. And it was really interesting because I think I had like 2 or 3 phone calls with the license like director in the US and all that. Like we had like long discussions where I was explaining what RPGs were to these
Oh yeah.
people, you know, like
Yeah. I've
and
thought about what that conversation would be like if I ever, got into it, because more than likely the person you're going to talk to is going to be like, well, see, we're used to licensing, action figures and toys and shirts and,
well, and that's
Funko
why it didn't
Pops
end up
and
happening
yeah.
because when it ended up not happening because they said, well, then how many like copies do you think you could like reasonably sell of this? And the number was not in the hundreds of thousands or the millions like they're used to, and they
Yeah.
weren't interested in small sales. So they were like, oh, no, thank you. And then just never answered my phone calls ever again.
Yeah, that was
Like it
the
was
end of the discussion.
it was just the end. I'm like, well, I could probably come up with a new proposal if we did this, this, this. Never got any calls back, left a bunch of messages. And I'm like, you know what? That's fair because, they're used to, again, like you said, like they're used to dealing with like people who are selling hundreds of thousands, if not millions of things, and they're raking in the money. And, an RPG, as fun as it would be for Naruto fans to have an RPG that is tailored right to them, and I know I could have done an amazing job with that shit. But like as amazing as it would have been, it would never have sold as many copies as they wanted to sell. So I mean that is what it is. And but that got me, Ninja Crusade Second Edition, which actually had a bunch of stuff that would have never made it into a Naruto official game that I threw in that game. So, I'm happy with what it, but it's interesting. I already know what it's like because I did try to go for that one. I mean, I only have the one story, one licensing story, but
Right. I don't have any. I've thought about I've had the idea bounce around my head, and I've thought, well, okay, I'm a person who does this like on the side. It would have to be an incredibly small license, like just like some little niche thing, and it would have to be like the people who were making the decisions with it would have to be like, oh, that'd be neat, and that's all they want to hear. Like they like you said, if it became a discussion of like, well, can you sell 100,000 copies? Then I'm out.
yeah,
But if they would be if their whole thing was like, I'd just like to see my thing in a game,
yeah,
and
yeah,
that'd be fun. And if we sell we sell a few thousand copies, cool.
yeah.
And we
Well, I
make
mean,
we
and
make
that's what
and
ended up happening.
we make a handful of fans happy.
Exactly,
Um, but
exactly.
it would have to be an incredibly small like license, like
I
a
was
very
thinking
small property.
when I was pitching it to them, I was like, we could probably sell between 10 and 20,000 copies of this, and like that would be like really high. That would be like not only selling to established RPG people, but bringing it to anime conventions and like talking the people who are just into Naruto into buying it because I was pitching it like we can add these set pieces in and we can fully explain the history of this and we can even go more in depth if you guys allow me to explain more of the back lore of some of these things in the world. Like it would have been really really cool because we could have used it as an RPG slash gate almost world guide in a way. You know what I
Right.
mean? And like we could have thrown new things in there and all kinds of stuff. I had a whole thing. We could have easily sold 10 or 20,000. And they were just like, "Oh, only that many? No, thank you."
Yeah,
And I was
that's
like,
not a.
"Oh, well,
you,
shit."
you're not, you didn't say 500,000. Well, all right.
Exactly. But you know what? The only other license that I have had was Camp Myth. I did Camp Myth as a license, and that was just it was a small like novel series written by Chris Carter, and I read it and I was like, this is fun. This could be a fun game. So I just emailed him and I said, do you want to make this into a game? And he's like, I've always thought about that might be fun to make it into a game. And then we did, and it was fun, and that was the second, I think that was the second pip system game that was released. Now that game is no longer available because that license ended
Right.
because he was supposed to be working on the next book, and people kept coming to me saying, when is Chris going to be done with the next book? And I'm like, I don't know. My name's not Chris. And I'm like, Chris, are you going to work on the next book? And he's like, I don't know. I kind of put it on the back burner because I'm working on some other stuff. And I'm like, I mean, the deal was like that I would make the RPG. Keep releasing the book.
Make more things.
I can't make more things until you make more things. Yeah. So, and I was like, well, I guess we're done. See you guys later. Bye. So, the license is up for that.
The new shiny.
Exactly.
The new shiny
exactly
popped
what
up,
happened.
and he decided, yep, okay, that's
exactly what happened. But I've heard though that right after I ended the license with him, he was already talking to somebody else about doing another version of it licensed as well. And I'm just like, well, I mean, for all of that, you should have just worked with me then. I would have worked on it with you again. I had no problem with him. It was just that he wasn't putting out stuff. And that was the deal, is like, I work on this stuff. You have to release more things though. Cause it's already a small property. Like small properties can't exist. Like, like a Naruto thing, we could release one book and just call that a day and it would just still keep selling because it's already a thing. But
right.
If it's a new thing, you have to keep up with that. You can't, people will forget about it in a second. And I already know that just from, all of my games are all original settings and, unique designs and all that stuff. And, sometimes when people are having conversations about, different genres of games and stuff, like, I'm always like, I'm just sitting there crossing my fingers. Oh, please name my game. You had to have heard of it at least once. Come on. So
I'm always flabbergasted when somebody out of the blue that I don't know mentions one of my games in some Twitter thread and tags me in, and I'm like, oh, somebody else plays Capers. That's
exactly
nice.
It's always too, and it's like, it's one thing if it's just like, oh, Craig just tagged me, thanks, Craig. But if it's like, I don't know who that person is, somebody outside of my circles actually played my game. This is amazing.
That's happened occasionally too, where like they didn't tag me specifically, but then somebody that knows me saw the post and just kind of threw it and said, hey, look at this. Like, because they know, because I've told people, like, you want to make a indie game designer's day, tell them you play the game and you like it. And just like, if I get one of those a week, I'll do this forever.
Oh yeah. Oh my gosh. I got a tweet today that was saying that like somebody's going to be starting a new actual play of Part-Time God 2nd Edition in March. And I was like, hell yeah. Like, I'm doing one right now on this channel. So that's awesome. We'll have a whole 2 games going on the internet at the same time.
Yeah. I had somebody contact me about an actual play for one of my games that's coming up too. I don't have an announcement to make just yet, but it like made my week. I was like, all right, great. Excellent.
Exactly. It's just crazy. It's just crazy. But I mean, and we actually it sucks too. The game has been going so well. We've only had a couple of sessions of the Part-Time Gods game we've been running here. But we had to end up skipping this week. So this past Wednesday, because one of my players was not feeling well. So we were like, oh crap. I was like, go get tested. Make sure it ain't a thing. But we'll see you next week. But the game is, and it's really, really fun. And again, I'm excited to get new stuff out for it as well. And we're playing with a lot of the new stuff in the game that we're running. So that's always fun. Like, I was like, it's previewing the stuff from the new book. I always like doing that sort of stuff.
Yeah. And that's what, I'm doing with the Saturday afternoon game. Is that's actually a playtest. You're going to see some things evolve as we play. Once we get more sessions in. So far, there hasn't been a lot of evolution because we're just starting. Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, especially those first sessions, because it's a lot of establishing and like conversations, like it was funny because like we started the game and I was just like, all right, cool. So this is what's happening. And they're just like, wait a minute, we didn't actually establish how we all got to know each other. And I'm like, all right, let's spend 45 minutes on that. That sounds fun. Let's do let's do that. Whatever you guys want to do. I was ready to start it, but if you guys aren't, let's, but I'm always the person who says go where the fun is. If that's fun for the players, let's do that. But I do like I've been liking, that's one thing, right? Like, keeping up with an online game would be more difficult if it wasn't for me having like an established schedule here. You know what I mean? That like, oh, we have to, like, it's Wednesdays at 8. Show up, like we're gonna play. I mean, barring people getting sick and things like that, So, and again, it really is. It's scheduling, having a deadline, staying motivated is actually it's what I've always said too, because people always say like, how do you get over writer's block? And my answer is usually the same, and it's probably a bad answer for some people, but it's essentially like have more than one project going at one time.
That helps.
That's what I say when it comes to writer's block. So if I get writer's block on one project, I switch to a different project. But
when I started with Mergers and Acquisitions, and that's the only thing I had going, like if I hit a wall on something, everything just ground to a halt for who knows how long. But then like once I had 2 or 3 things that were like in various stages, even if it was just rudimentary, or even if I'm just like, I've got an idea and I'm going to flesh it out on a page.
Yeah.
And maybe never come back to it, or maybe it might, take a year or 2 before I come back to it. It gives me something else to do.
But the worst part is if you aren't able to control that urge. Because I've done that before where I have 7 projects going at one time. So if you have too many of that happening, then you end up with just a whole bunch of unfinished projects.
Yep. And so that's a whole other problem.
Yeah. So I usually try to limit myself to like 4 nowadays. I'll have 4 things that I will actively work on, and I might like write something down and I'll put it away for later. But okay. Like 4 active things.
Let me see. Good Strong Hands is just about to go to print. Low Stakes is on Kickstarter. The time travel game is being developed, and I've got a game in playtest. Okay, yeah, I'm at 4.
There you go. So, and that's the thing, right? Is like if you go more than that, you might be stretching yourself too thin, and then it makes it so that yes, cool, you added a 5th one and you can focus on that one, but that means you now have 4 things that are not getting done now at that point. So, and I'm talking specifically about RPG things, because I usually have at least 4 RPG things going, plus a bunch of other stuff, of course, that are non-RPG related. So, but RPG things, it's usually good to have at least two, so that when you're working on one and you get stuck, you can at least switch to the other.
Yes, so, and if you're crocheting, have 2 crocheting projects going on.
Yeah. Well, I mean, I think writer's block for a crocheter is like carpal tunnel, right? Like, like you get arthritis, so maybe you need to do something else. Maybe what's something else creative but doesn't require fine motor as skills and manual dexterity.
Sure.
Maybe you go to a spinning class.
It was just an example. Like just have a couple different things that you can.
Yeah, it was a good callback. I was just trying to see if I was trying to translate what writer's block would be in crocheting, because I assume it'd be like, oh, writer's block could be you run out of that color yarn. So you're like, darn it, I can't do any more on this one because I need to go buy more yarn. So let me switch to another one because I do have the color for that. Bam, got it. Okay. See, we figured it out. We figured it out. That's what this episode has turned into. It's the fundamentals of crocheting.
From 2 people that don't crochet.
Exactly. I have no clue how to crochet. I see people do it and I'm like, but it's like a twist and
It looks like magic. It looks like magic. They've got 2 wands and they make a thing and it's like alakazam.
And it's so weird, right? Because like whenever I look at people like that, I always think like that's me with game design. Like people, I've been in doing music a lot more, and like I'll have people be like, yeah, you just you take the guitar and you go, and I'm like, cool, I can kind of strum some stuff here and there, but like whatever you just did, I can't do that. But then I just imagine like in game design, I am to game design that they are to the guitar. It's just like you can give me any concept and I'll design circles around most people. So
well, I think that's the case with anybody who has developed a certain proficiency with something creative, that
And it's been doing it for a long time.
it's not a big deal to them. It's something that they can do easily, and other people that don't have that experience look at it like it's magic. I remark
Exactly.
this when I see like when I see artists put up like time lapse videos or even real time videos of their
Yeah.
painting work, of like actual, honest to goodness paint on brush on canvas painting work, and I go, that's like magic. That's literally like magic to me.
Oh yeah,
If you
my
asked me to
middle
do that,
son
I
does
could
that.
swing, I could wave that painty wand around, but
Hmm.
I'm not going to create anything pretty.
No, my middle son does like Pokemon art. Like he'll make up his own monsters and like he does all the shading and different colors and all that stuff. And I'll just be like, "Oh my gosh, like that's so good." And he'll do like live streams and he'll do it live and be talking to people while I'm like, "What are you even I don't even could never do that." It's ridiculous how skilled you have to be to do something like that.
Somebody asked before we kill our time here. Somebody asked in the chat how Low Stakes is going. Like
Oh,
quick details. 400 backers in 4 days. Which is not 100 backers a day. It was a big opening, and then it's like halved every day since, which is fine.
yeah,
And if it gets into the 20 a day run for the next 10 days, and then there's a big push at the end, it's gonna be over 600 backers. For
nice.
without too much difficulties, or maybe 700. Yeah, it's going really well. Like this is maybe like hour spent per dollar that I'm making off of the thing. This is my most successful Kickstarter because it was a little
Exactly.
game that didn't take a great deal of time to develop,
Right.
and it put a little playtesting time into it. I did the layout myself, and I didn't have to spend because it's small. It didn't require a lot of art, and the editing cost was low. So like the money that's right now, it's 400 backers, $4,766, and that includes like printing and shipping costs for the people who are getting the book. But it's like I'm actually making money off of like a relatively quick turnaround game. So I was remarking to Eloy before we started recording here that like I want to do more of these because I want to see if this like holds up outside of Zine Quest month, where everybody's looking for these types of games. Like if I can do a little game like this and have it be pretty successful any time of the year, it might change part of my business strategy.
Exactly.
And I'll do more of
Yeah.
these little games because they're a lot of fun. They're really quick turnaround. You get to create them and then have created them a lot faster.
A
And so
lot faster.
you get that serotonin, you get that like little chemical rush when it's
Oh
it's
yeah.
done.
Yeah, and I
You
was
get to
telling
that a
Craig
lot
earlier.
quicker.
Yeah, and I was telling Craig earlier that it reminded me of when I did Sins of the Father, because I wrote that book in like 2 or 3 weeks, and it was a super fast turnaround. Barely paid anything in like stock art for the interior art, laid it out myself, and and it was done. And it still sells very well, including the additional source book we wrote for it that added additional stuff. But it still sells well, and it was nominated for like best game. And that was the thing that blew me away. I'm like, I can spend a year working on a giant game and it would never get a nom. But I spent 3 weeks working on this game, and it gets nominated, and everybody's like, "Ooh, ooh, that's pretty. Ooh, that game." And I'm like, "Really, that game?" Like I,
I mean, I love all my games equally, but that game.
but that game really? Like, I did some cool stuff in that game, but it was just very weird because that was not the game I was expecting to like blow up the way that it did.
Well, I'm
So
interested to see how Low Stakes will sell after the Kickstarter, just because it's such a low price point. But will
yeah,
people find it? You know, I think it benefits right now from being an homage, and inspired by What We Do in the Shadows, which has its hardcore fan base that loves it. So like every so often, somebody's going to find this game and go, "I love What We Do in the Shadows." $6, yoink.
yeah,
And
pretty much.
it may sell well. But even if it doesn't, like
Gonna,
I made money on it, so
yeah, I think it's gonna be. I think it's gonna go gangbusters for you.
it's gonna outsell Capers.
Probably.
Oh, it's gonna have more backers than Capers. It's gonna beat
Yeah.
Capers is 532 backers. That's my record. This is going to beat that by 100 probably,
Yeah.
unless it just tanks out, which could happen. But if it keeps at the rate I think it's going to do, it's gonna beat Capers by 100 or more.
Even if you experience the same lull in the middle that everybody does, like you'll get that
the
big
lull,
bump at the end.
right? But I expect the lull is going to be 15 to 20 a day rather than 5 to 10
Exactly.
because
So
it's so cheap.
Yeah. I think you'll be fine.
It'll be interesting.
I'm not worried about you.
You know, it's blown past. Here's the marker for you. Keep an eye out for when it hit $6,000. That was Murders and Acquisitions. That was my first Kickstarter.
Okay.
So if I can do more than that with a little bitty game than I did with my very first attempt at this, it means that I've probably like advanced. I guess I've leveled up as a game designer. Like I've created a product that is, it required less work on my part, was better received, and actually produced a profit, which Murders and Acquisitions really didn't. Like I see a little bit of sales since then, but like the Kickstarter itself didn't make any money. I basically just covered my expenses.
It's sometimes just about the concept too. You know,
yeah. Sometimes you hit the right thing at the right time, and I think what we do in the shadows is popular right now.
And sometimes, like I've seen some games that I have purchased off of Kickstarter because the concept was really strong, and then I get the game, and I'm like, the concept's good, but this game is bad. So it's like, you know, I'm not naming names or anything, but I've backed a lot of things on Kickstarter. So I've gotten some amazing things, but I have also gotten a few duds.
There's some stinkers.
Quite live up to what I was hoping.
Yeah.
And I hope that nobody has experienced that with my things, is what I'll say.
Oh, I guarantee you it has.
Darn it.
Sorry. And I know it's happened to me too. I've seen people that have been like, "Ooh, a comedy horror game about killing people in a horror movie. Okay, cool." And then they get it, and it doesn't like. It's like, well, I didn't expect it to play like this.
Yeah,
like because everybody gets it in their head like the way they think something's going to be, and there's going to be disappointment. But if all goes well, the people who are disappointed, just keep that to themselves and move on and go play a different game rather than showing up at your drive-through RPG reviews and putting a shitting all over your game.
You are funny
because it's not
understand the age of the internet that we live in
because it's not. No, see, what I'm doing is a literary device called understatement and exaggeration in pair. Yeah. No, I'm sure.
I thought you were just doing hopeful thinking.
No, I'm not stupid. But there's a part of me that wants to believe that, but there's also a part of me that is very realistic and cynical and is like, no, I've gotten pooped on a few times by people telling me what they thought of the game.
I think we've all definitely experienced that. I have a video on my channel called the Nemesis theory, which is essentially that's what I did. Is my first really super scathing review that I ever got. I was like, who wrote that? And then I was like, all right, that guy's an RPGs too. What has he done? And I was like, okay, this is what he's done. This is what he does. And I said, okay, I'm going to do better than him. What company does he work for? I'm going to go work for that company and I'm going to beat him out. How many books has he written? I'm going to beat him. How much clout does he have? I'm going to have more clout than that person. And then essentially that happened. And then I moved on to other Nemesi. I have more nemesis.
Ooh, can I tell you my nemesis story?
Sure.
Okay, without naming names.
Without naming names, because I try not to do that.
Yeah, there's no point. There's no point in that. But years ago, when 4th edition D&D first came out, and the PDF thing was much bigger, was kind of like, oh my god, you can punch out all these little little supplements, microtransaction PDF stuff, and 4th edition came out, and people were trying to crunch stuff out for it real quick under what they had available as a license. I don't remember how I got in touch with this guy, but we got together and we talked, and I wrote a thing. He had an online imprint that he was going to print, do this stuff, like these small projects for. And I wrote a thing and he really liked it. And I was like, great. And so I pitched another idea, and then I wrote that thing and I gave it to him, and he said, this is very bad. and listed like one or two reasons why it was really bad. And then I asked, well, because I was coming off of like having freelance with Wizards and a few other companies, and been like, well, thinking of him as a developer or a producer, and be like, well, can you tell me what needs to be done? What like what should I do to make this what you want it to be?
Yeah.
And he informed me that basically, his business model, I guess, didn't have the time for him to do that sort of thing. He either had to produce something that was, this is what it was implied, that I had to produce something that he could use straight out with just like maybe a little, tweaking a development on his part, but no real time spent with the freelancer, or he couldn't use it. And then he said, and there are words I will never forget, although they were typed out. He said in email, maybe you're not cut out for game design. After I produced one 2,500 word, 2,000 word thing, maybe that he didn't like. Maybe you're not cut out for game design. I would like to motion to the Nerdburger Games empire. And the multiple games with supplements and accessories that are out there, and and 10 successful Kickstarters and all that other stuff. And I look around to that guy, and he's doing next to nothing right now. And so, so everybody out there, when somebody comes in there and poops on what you're doing, whatever. Take it with a grain of salt.
Do better than them. That's all you got to do. You just show them that you can do better than they did. And that's enough a lot of the time. It's interesting though, on the other side of that story, and then I guess we're almost done. But for AMP, so we have one of the affiliations in AMP that it's called the Na'amakuma. They're from Hawaii. So I was like, okay, cool. I need to hire somebody to write the supplement for them, to like detail what it's like to be a member of that group and what are their special abilities and powers and stuff like that. And I was like, yes, this is going to be a lot of fun. So I actually I sent like a word out to like my friends who are other publishers, and one of them suggested this writer, again, not naming any names. So I say, cool. I gave them the examples of the existing affiliation guides, and I said, I essentially need something like these, but for, they live in Hawaii and it's this and this and this. So what I got back was basically just like, it was about 12,000 words of just like, white people are the devil and Hawaii, it sucks to be Hawaiian. Like essentially, right? And I was like, so I read through it and I'm like, okay, so essentially nothing that this writer wrote was wrong. It was all historically based, and all of the stuff about how all the different nations and stuff kind of took over Hawaii and started divvying it up between each other and all like, I get all of that. Like there was a lot of, I'm sure probably actual Hawaiian people feel like that, and they might think that. And then I gently reminded this writer that this is for a game. So like you can include some of this stuff, but it needs to be fun to play as a game. So, and then of course they were like, well, I'm not going to do anything else. I'm not rewriting it. And I said, well, then you're fired and I'll have somebody else write it. And then apparently like for a good little bit, I was the racist who hated Hawaiians for a while there. Like when I say a while, I mean like 3 days. And then everybody was like, this writer is whacked out. Who is this person? And that person, as far as I know, does not work in RPGs anymore. But literally, it was just, there is a certain level. Like I'm woke, right? Like I see the injustices in the world, and I think it's actually very interesting to include some of those things within the larger context of an existing game framework. But you can't just write that stuff. It still needs to be playable. It still needs to be part of the game. You know what I mean? It's just really
12,000 words of that is a little much.
Like if I give you a 12,000 word thing and like 1,500 words of it is that, I'm like, you go. Yeah, I think it's definitely interesting, and those things need to be spoken about. Let's do it. But if it's the whole thing, Yeah, it's not any good. Anyway, we ended up hiring a different person, and the supplement was wonderful. So there you go.
there's there's a small part of me that wants very badly to put on my business card, Craig Campbell, owner, Nerdburger Games, not cut out for game design. The problem is that every time I hand out my business card, I'd have to tell the story. And the story is fun to tell once in a while, but I don't want to have to do it 30, 40, 50, 100 times at a convention.
I think, though, what you could do is you could just have it not cut out for game design, and then do like a QR code that brings them to the certain timestamp of this video. and then they'll understand the story. And then you don't have to explain it.
Yeah. Put that on the back of it. Put that on the back of the card.
Yeah, they'll be like, yeah, if you have any questions, just click the QR code. That's all. That's
like, I could just, it could be some douchebag in the RPG industry, quote, maybe you're not cut out for game design, end quote, QR code to the timestamp in this video.
I mean, it could work, is all I'm saying.
Because I've done fun stuff on the back of my business cards before, right? My business card right now has a game on the back.
What you got on the back?
What?
Tell me more about that.
It's just a silly little thing that's called crap. It's been a while since I looked at a business card. I gotta make sure I get the title right, because it's a weird title.
Okay.
It's a multi-word title. Here. Nope, that's the wrong card. Lucky Dino Robo Pirates.
Okay. I'm listening. Tell me more.
I'm trying to make sure. Oh, there we go. There's one. See, I can read it here. Yeah, Lucky Dino Robo Pirates. I got it correct. Yeah, I'm not going to read the whole game to you, but basically, it uses a deck of playing cards. The players, it's GM-less. Everybody like makes up an idea for a character, and then you draw cards in order to determine how you handle a problem, and the pip value determines whether you fail or succeed, or succeed really well or whatever. And then the suit determines which of your 4 parts, lucky being part dinosaur, part robot, or part pirate, is what helps you to do the thing. So you have to, like, whatever the suit is tells you, like, oh, well, it's diamond. So my dinosaur side, the resolution to this task is all about me being part dinosaur. So you have to describe it as, like you do a dinosaur thing as part of whatever it is. Yeah.
That's a fun idea.
And you tell the story until you're happy with how it ends, and then you're done.
Okay.
The whole thing is, you can't really see it.
No, it's hard to see on the thing,
but I think you can kind of.
Oh wow, it's so tiny.
Yeah, it's real tiny type. Yeah.
I love it.
The front actually just says all the normal stuff. It doesn't say anything about not being cut out for game design.
Wow. All right, cool. Well, I guess we're done. I think we're hitting.
We hit
our hour. So thank you to everybody who came and chatted with us in the chat there. Every week we do this. We get just a few more people, so that's nice. I like that. We're growing slowly. We'll get there. But that's definitely
the best kind of growth.
Exactly. It's called organic. Jesus, guys. All right. So I guess guys, I will see you next week for both my game. But I won't see you again for another fun chat here for another 2 weeks. Go back low stakes, though. Go do that. Next time we're on, I might be telling you to go back something else. But right now, go back Craig's thing. All right. Bye, everybody.
Good night.